Cool. All right. Spent 4 hours ironing out technical difficulties, and there's more. Fantastic. But you guys can hear me?
Yes.
You want to try talking?
Yeah, I could try talking.
Can you do talking?
No, I don't do anything.
There's no doing.
There's no doing.
There is no doing.
See,
So
right away, we're in the Gita.
That's right. Well, this is cool. Hi. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Andrew Dugas. This is my space along with my wife's and a whole bunch of other cool people. And for those of you that don't know this guy, this is my teacher, Robert Boustany. And if you like my style, then you really like him. So before we get started, just a couple little things. You might notice this guy. So this is a picture I took of Robert in 2005, something like that.
Something like that.
His toes were in 2010, but he was in 2005. That's a platinum palladium print. That means you're looking at platinum and palladium molecules on cotton fibers. It's the most archival form of photography. It'll look just like that in 1,000 years. It doesn't fade. You can't hurt it. And platinum and palladium is more expensive than gold. So I also made this frame. I did not bleed on this frame, but I made it, and I'm at it. It's all archival, museum grade, everything. And tonight is a fundraiser for a nonprofit, Promise to Kids, with the number 2. It's the idea behind the nonprofit. Welcome. Hey, I was just looking at pictures of you. That's crazy. It's been like a decade of a little bit. No, pictures I took.
Oh my God.
That's what I'm
I've
saying.
seen you in forever.
I was looking at pictures of her in my computer.
Wow.
That's crazy.
All right, hugs
doing
later,
this.
okay?
Yeah, digitally. Wow. So, Promise to Kids, the idea behind it is you locate separated siblings in foster care and give them a chance to see each other in the summer. And so anything that you donate today, we're having basically a silent auction for this guy. Whoever donates the most will get to take this home. So that's been our pleasure sort of doing that, and it's obviously up to you. This is just for fun. So I've been looking for an excuse to get him in the studio, workshop-y something for a few years, and it occurred to me that of all the people that are still around Houston, I kind of know all of his stories.
Yeah, there might be a new one or two.
Well, I know, excuse me, circa 2008 and prior, I know all of his stories, or at least enough of them that I could ask interesting questions. And I know his teachers, and I know how long he was in the petrochemical industry,
Right.
and what brand of negative ionizer he had at his desk. So
They were smoking in the office. We
Yes.
had to do something.
yeah, but at least they had a place to come and breathe.
That's true.
Yeah,
And full spectrum lights.
full spectrum light.
And an electrostatic filter.
Back in the
With
day,
cardboard ducting going right to my face. Seriously.
there was he had hair then, and so he had
Yeah.
this illusion of great speed at his desk.
Yeah.
So why are we here? It occurred to me that part of the conversations we could have, I'm curious about. It's up to you. The ventilation, I think, will be pretty important. That door open. If my children are bothering you, then I can silence them. I do. I'll bet you anything. Yeah. Yeah. Loving kindness. So. The thing that I think might be the most interesting to talk about, at least to start, I have 2 jobs for today. I'm the interlocutor. I'm curious, how did Houston produce one of the most influential yoga teachers of our generation? A guy who hadn't been to India and yet created this thing that I know has saved my life. Come on, yeah. We have a rule in our style that you can come late. There are 2 rules. The first rule is when you come late, you have to enter like a ninja. Just totally quiet. And then the second rule is you have to be sorry. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. As long as you're sorry, we're good. And be quiet. So, and then my second job, of course, is to keep him on task, because he will be talking, and we're going to find all kinds of stuff to distract ourselves with. And then the only other thing, if you like this, we have a couple other things planned, but the one that's actually on the books right now is May 11th, where we'll be doing this exact same thing with 4 speakers talking about ideas that there are some really pretty important people that are out in the world with their businesses doing things, changing people's lives, and they all find a way to practice yoga every day and work 100 hours. That's an interesting question to me. So we'll actually be renting the big space in here, and on that event, we'll be feeding you. Yeah! This will be just all food, just complete solid foodness. And then right here will be the whiskey, and then right here, 2 kinds of ice cream and a cake. So I'm just letting you know, May 11th, you should be here. If not for any other reason than the cake. It's also the best ice cream you've ever had. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so you're a mathematician,
Yes.
engineer. You're a problem solver, a physicist. What made you start caring about helping people feel better?
Whoa, it started a long time ago.
Everything was a long time ago.
Long time ago. This was specifically pretty close to 66 years ago. And man, I'm sleeping alone in a bedroom in a little wooden house with no air conditioner, no fans, in a summer setting in South Louisiana where you could smell the herbs because the air was so clean. And I'm lying down alone, and my parents had told me, God is everywhere. And that's the only education I had at the age of 4.5, 5 years old. And so when they told me that, I was lying there, and I figured, okay, well, I see the stars at night. So I imagined this big black box, rectangular, not square, rectangular box, and God looking from outside. But I said, no, that's wrong, because they said God is everywhere. That means God is inside here too. And that means the extent of creation is boundless. And that was my first impression of infinity, and it scared me. And I thought at that point, why should there be anything? Like, why should there even be a God? And now, how is this great being lost in the middle of all eternity without beginning? And then I decided at that point to become a scientist. And the reason I did was because I didn't want any other child, if I could stop one child from having the fear I had that night, then I thought to myself, my life will be worthwhile. And so that's how I decided to become a scientist. And then the rest kind of unfolded, and there's lots of other stories and so on. But that was the beginning. And
you've arrived.
yeah, and I'm very interested in helping kids because, kids are amazingly intuitive. They're brilliant. And some of the most brilliant and sensitive kids suffer the most because they go inside themselves and there's no one to talk to. I was in South Louisiana. There was no one to talk to. There was no book with yoga on it.
Did you suffer?
Yes. It was really hard. And so the definitive story, there's a lot more than that, but the definitive story was, I was sitting on my mother's couch at the age of 11, which is when you start practicing yoga. Bones have to ossify by that time. And I spontaneously went into Padmasana. And Padmasana is done a very specific way. If you look at Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you cross left leg over first and then right leg because the aorta goes left. And so blood pressure is a little higher to the left. So the yogis balance out the two sides. The Tibetans go the other way because they're trying to stay awake while they're doing in practice, but the yogis are going into samadhi. So I went into this. And my mother turns around from her sink and she looks at me. It's like, what are you doing? I'm doing yoga. She said, what's yoga? And I said, well, the easiest way I can explain, these are my exact words, it's an Eastern exercise form, but there's a lot of philosophy and other things I can't explain to you. And she said, well, who taught it to you? I told her, no one did. I remember it. And she turned right back to the dishes and
nice,
started, and she never asked me again. And then a few years pass, I'm practicing yoga, and nobody knows what the heck I'm doing. But one day, and this is a good story. I was sitting in the middle of the floor, and I had a relative that was there at the time, and I could feel her energy, and she was uncomfortable. And so she'd pass by, and I would take my hand, and I would sweep the energy off when she'd pass by. And so she walks by, and I closed my eyes, and a voice inside of me said, everyone is connected. And I went into a really deep state of meditation, which is very easy for me to do in those days. I mean, by this particular point, just kind of living in urban society and going through so much stuff, I'm pretty corrupted. I'm not really in that pure state anymore.
You're
but
deranged.
Deranged, definitely.
Yeah, he's deranged.
Yeah, insane. But I mean, I take this as a compliment.
That's
Because,
right. That's an Ayurvedic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a functional deranged being.
That's right.
Okay, I can actually contribute to society,
That's right.
which is nice. All right. So, so I went into this deep state of meditation. It was like pure black, and this voice said, "We're all connected." And it was specifically in response to what I did when this person walked by me. And I closed my eyes, and I saw the most gorgeous. See, it gets me to remember that, because I remember that place. I saw the most gorgeous tapestry of every soul connected by the finest gold threads you can imagine. And I came out of that meditation, I don't know how long, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, and the same person walked by. And I didn't do anything because I knew I could feel her soul in the tapestry. And I realized, like, why would you separate yourself from anyone? Why would you judge anyone for anything? That it's there, it's dance that's going on, and people, and I have a strong feeling about this, people judge other people for whatever. But material existence is not the way you think it is. It's like cause and effect doesn't work the way you think it is. Yes, you have free will. There are things that you can definitely do. But it's not as causative as you would think. And I'm not going to try and explain that.
Would you recommend sitting on couches more?
No, I think hard wooden floor, and I don't like pedestals either because you can fall off of them and hurt yourself.
No, people push you off.
Yeah, they do. They will do that.
Yeah.
No, I like the floor. I like stone. I like the idea of cave. I like solid stuff. That's what I like. And so how do you become solid? There's one way to be solid. This is a directive because now I'm in my element. The directive is never take your love away from anybody for any reason. You figure out inside of yourself how that person might be supported in a way so that they can learn something. There's far too much judgment in our reality. And that doesn't mean that there aren't things that doesn't mean you justify anything. But it's like, if you say that person is to blame for whatever it is, well, now you just made yourself a victim. And I don't encourage anybody to ever be a victim. So someone can be torturing you, and what do? Like my friend Jack Schwartz, I met Jack Schwartz at one point, he was being tortured. These are stories that people have heard before. And what did he do? He was being tortured in an internment camp. And a voice came out of him, probably like the same voice that talked to me in my head. And it's like, and he said, I love you. The guy who was torturing me said that to the guy who said in a very powerful voice, and he said, this guy picked me up and carried me back to my cell, and my wounds were healing. While I was being carried, I could feel my wounds healing, and I decided then and there that I was going to survive this in good shape to make sure I could do everything possible to make sure that never happened again. And he said, I gave my clothes away to other people. They were walking in the snow and they were shivering, and I had no clothes on and I wasn't shivering. Totally transformational. Find the power inside of you because it is in you. It is in you. The most powerful being runs through your heart. No doubt about it. But you have to figure it out. Don't listen to me. You know, he told me that one time. He was going off somewhere where there was great rock climbing. And I wanted to go. I never did get out there. And he told me that one time. You know, we were sitting down and giving a goodbye party, whatever that means. And you give goodbyes. And, you know. Okay, I'm not going to get into puns over that. But he said, you see that guy over there? Pointed to me. He said, you see that guy? Don't believe anything he says, but if he says something, at least consider it.
No, do it. No, do it. No, do it. Try it.
So you got to try it. Don't be a victim.
But Robert, being a victim is so delicious.
Absolutely.
It's
You
the
get
best
so
thing.
many more people to visit you.
It's,
I mean, who are you going to visit? Are you going to visit the victim? Or are you going to visit the person who's doing extremely well? And then figure out why they're doing extremely well. That doesn't mean don't go see the victim. Yeah, sure, love them, by all means. Invite them to see the guy who's successful and say, hey, ask him questions, how they got there. Everybody's gifted. Same power that runs through any of us. Same power through any of us. Same power, not different. Not different.
I think that's one of the biggest gifts from your style. So I tried to look at lineage, particularly lineage of ideas. Like, where do ideas come from? Where did I come up with this? Where's the source of this particular idea? And I think there's a lot of levels we could have this conversation on, but I'm also curious. There's the level of universe, and then there's the level of taxes, right? And you can feel really great about the universe, and if you don't pay your taxes and you go to jail, it's a real bummer. So there's still stuff that we have to do, and what I've always been really present to you is you've been an incessantly hungry learner. And you know, maybe from our modern perspective, seeking out a coach is like, oh yeah, it's coaching. In 1983, not so much. Like, he was doing this from very early, and so one of the things that's present in all of our styles is, okay, so if he's not on a pedestal, that means we're all in the trenches together. We're all doing this work together. So I think that's what he was saying. But when someone talks and everybody goes, wow, that's amazing, for like 30 years, it's real easy to think you're free from coachability, like you don't need any help. And I've never once experienced Robert, and I've never seen him in a period of his life where he wasn't actually actively getting coaching from somebody. So I want to talk about your teachers in a little bit, but I wonder, there's a pretty high level, if you look at all the people who teach yoga at a high level, whatever that means, you see a lot of artists, you see a lot of dancers, and you've described in the past, in mathematics, what are you doing? You're just sitting and intensely focusing for hours and hours and hours. What do you think a yoga practice is? And part of, if you didn't do anything like that in your life, it's kind of hard to start a meditation practice. But, you would just sit and focus on stuff for hours and hours and hours. But, so I'm curious, how would you describe why you are, so I don't know if you understand what I mean by coachable, but have you ever tried to coach somebody and they were like, they knew it all? They were fine. No, I got it. It's good. I'm good. Thank you. No. I don't need coaching. That's not coachable. And you know that what you were saying would have really helped them? Right, exactly. So this guy is super coachable. So,
and a good reason.
I'm curious about that.
The good reason is because every human being comes with a series of impressions etched from their life experience, right? You have some scars, you have some wounds, you've been out there living, and you come in with something, and the beginning of it, in the beginning of this whole process, you start noticing how, as a kid, you start noticing how judgmental other adults are of, say, your parents, as an example. And you see how it affects them.
This is a Lebanese couple in southern Louisiana.
Yep. And
It's a little too dark?
a tough environment. It's a tough environment.
Not black, not white?
No. And we're living on the poor end of town where, boyfriend might be beating up girlfriend in the middle of the street at night. So it was not a quiet neighborhood. And so what do you notice? You notice, okay, what's important at that particular point? And I'll tell you what was important to me. To me, seeing that kind of circumstance is, okay, Catholic family. So what happens with Catholic family? Well, you say rosary, you say some prayers. And so when we're saying prayers, you kneel down, you say your prayers, whole family says it together. And what are you focusing on? You're focusing on the meaning of every word you say the entire time you're praying. And why do you do that? Because if you don't have any discipline, if you don't control yourself, if you don't try to become as quiet, if you don't quiet the noise inside of you, then you can't perceive clearly the subtlety of whatever it is going on, certainly inside of you or certainly in creation. So if you want to understand what creation is, the first thing that has to happen is you got to reduce the noise in your head. Otherwise, you're just sitting there listening to yourself talk and swallowing every word that goes through your head. And where the heck is it coming from? If you have a radio here, you can tune into so many stations. You have a television here, you can tune into so much. You have a cell phone here, you can tune into so much. So what the heck is going on in your head? What are you picking up? You don't even know what it's affecting. So at some point, you have to develop enough power and enough quietude inside of yourself. You have to lower your noise to a point and become strong enough that the outside doesn't become the influence. This idea that you have free will under those circumstances is absurd. You have to be at a point where you quiet the noise. That's the only way that you can think clearly. So I was obsessed, even as a small child, with trying to keep mind as quiet as possible. Because if you want to perceive clearly, what do you also have to do? You have to listen to the other person. Which is why I don't like arguments. It's like, you tell me what's going on with you and you explain to me and tell me how you're feeling, and then let me do the same thing, and then we can communicate. It's a cooperative venture. It's not combative.
Dang
Although it's fun to have somebody who really knows how to combat. It's one of my favorite guys. So in this whole process, and he's going to keep me on track in just a second.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's coming. So what ends up happening? You develop this ability to focus your mind. Because if you don't focus your mind, if you can't focus clearly on all the subtleties that's going, however noisy your mind is, that's the most subtle thing you can understand. Now, this comes to all of you guys, so now we're getting a little bit more to the answer. So what happens with everyone else that's come into my yoga classes or in my life over a period of time? Every person came in with certain things they've gone through, certain things they suffered through, and they share their suffering. You share your suffering with me. You share it, so I don't have to live through the nightmare you have. So what does that mean? That means I love you. That's what it means. And don't get freaked out by it, because nothing weird's going on here. It's just the idea is why do I care? It's like, who trained me? You trained me. I didn't train me. You trained me. Why? Because you shared things I couldn't experience otherwise. And it's surprising. I was in first grade. I had people coming up to me asking me questions about things like, and I had no idea why they were doing it, but anyhow, they came up and asked. And I had some insight, so I would say things. So who are my teachers? Everyone's my teacher. Everyone's my teacher. What Prem Rawat, great guru that trained me early on, what did he say? He said, if God can create a body for you, then couldn't God create a body and come and visit you? So whenever you look into anyone's eyes, look very carefully. And I don't take that casually. Does that mean? I don't take that casually. Let's just say that. I'll say that, okay? That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, but nonetheless. Okay.
Well, so I think, there's signal and noise.
Yep.
Right, so when we talk about noise and we're trying to get clear understanding, I want to listen to you. Part of why, say, a room like this with two people in it, there's a problem. There's sound bouncing off, so if you have any issues with any frequency, there's too much noise, and so the signal in my voice is getting lost. And of course what we're talking about with the noise, it's the incessant chatter of the voice that's in your head that's talking right now. Like right now? You hear it, right? I don't have that voice. What is he talking about? What am I going to have for dinner? I thought there'd be food. He said ice cream. All right, so that's the noise, and that's on autopilot. Did you choose to think that thought? Probably not. So, okay, so we want to get some power in what we choose to put our attention on. Is the signal there, or are you trying to find something to focus on?
No, the signal's inside, and the signal's inside in a really specific way. So at first you believe the voice. At first there's all the noise, the chatter. The inner noise is always louder than the outer noise. It's like always. And at a certain point, you come to a very refined energy, very refined vibration inside of you. And what people would call that very refined vibration inside, they might call it like love. But it has nothing to do with anything outside. It has nothing to do with that. So usually the distraction outside is like, oh, donut. Okay, and if you really love donuts, it's like suddenly the mind is quiet. And, you stick the donut in your mouth and you didn't even taste it because you ate it so fast because you wanted it so bad that all you feel is like, oh, my stomach is not feeling that good. But I didn't really enjoy the donut, so you have another donut.
Is that to fill the donut hole inside you?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Indians have those little, fried donut holes. Yeah, if you go to an Indian restaurant, they'll give you those. They don't give you the outer donut, just the inner donut.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll stop. Okay. If you get the two of us going, no, it gets really bad.
We'll talk about the next talk here momentarily. So the signal's there. So, I don't relate to the word like manifest.
Right.
It's so sexist. That's right. And so if you think of something like, okay, when you're ready, the teacher comes. There's all these pithy sayings that are obnoxiously true. And did the teacher come because you opened some inner donut hole door that they could then enter, or you were actually looking for the signal teacher?
I was in a weird circumstance. So I was going to an all-boys Catholic school. So great education, great physical program, and there was a theologian at the particular cathedral next door to the school so I would go and talk to this theologian. And what I started finding is like, well, I learned a lot about philosophy, but I didn't get many answers to my questions. So I'm sitting there and, okay, I got to look for something else. And I finally, how long did it take? I think in my sophomore year in college, or no, the summer of my freshman year in college, I saw my first yoga book. I hadn't seen a yoga book before.
Shivananda?
Actually, Richard Hittleman.
Oh, yeah.
Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation. That was the first one I found. And it was in the library, and that was...
In the devil section.
Yeah, somewhere there. But, I mean, it wasn't marked that way because bad things could have happened to the books.
Yeah.
So I checked it out, and then it was checked out for a very long time. And then I started doing, all the pranayama. And basically, I would do everything in the book. And by the time I got into grad school, I was doing everything in the book every day. So it was about 3.5-hour practice every day. And at one point, I think, let's see, where was that? I had just gotten to Rice. And so I'm living alone in a really bad neighborhood. Seems to go along with me. I'm in a much better neighborhood now. It's like it's improved.
This is before Tai Chi sword forms, so he was pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, it's like, this is like 1970. So 1970, and I'm sitting there, and I was running 8 or 10 miles a day. I'd been doing that since I was about 13. And so I go out and run 8 or 10 miles every day. And summer one summer I'm at home. So I wasn't in grad school that particular summer. It was very early on. And I had these cotton shorts I wore, and I noticed an irritation on the inside of my left leg. And there was this black mole there. And so I showed it to my parents. I go, we should check this out. So go over to the local MD, and he cuts it out and said, looks like malignant melanoma. We need to send you to MD Anderson. Well, I just moved to Houston, so that was good. So I went to MD Anderson, and they took the biopsy, looked at everything, and said indeterminate as to whether or not it's cancer. And so how did this come about? During the time I was running, right before I recognized this, I knew enough about karma by now. I thought, I would like to be purified of my karma, but I want to be purified in such a way that I'm not an invalid so that I can continue to serve. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. And it was right after that thought going through my head that I found this thing. And so I figured, okay, it's all part of the plan. Relax, everything's going to be fine. But it's still shocking when when doctors MD Anderson say, okay, yeah, it's malignant. And I already knew what was going on. It's like, okay, they're going to take out the lymph nodes, and if they find cancer in the lymph nodes, they're going to amputate my leg. So I knew all that. And I wasn't supposed to know that, but I knew stuff. So I'm in there, and this is the definitive story. The definitive story was I'm in the terminal ward. I come out of recovery. I'm lying in a hospital bed. It's, my parents come to visit me, and the doctor comes to visit me. He looks at my leg and says, okay, 9 days we'll take the stitches out. You'll be walking in a week. You'll be able to drive in a month. And in a year, you'll be running again. And they took all the lymph nodes out from like here to here, so it's a big part of me. I never had lymphedema because I do yoga, right? So if you know people that have problem with surgery and so forth and so on, do yoga. It's a good thing to do. So I'm lying in this hospital bed. That's the last thing the doctor tells me. They leave, and I'm just lying there. And they didn't, pain control in those days was not great. So when the narcotics wore off, the people would start screaming from the pain. So I'm in this room, sweating because my metabolism's up so high, and I'm hearing all these people screaming in the background, and so it's not exactly the best setting. And so it's about midnight, and I'm lying there, and I'm getting to the punchline, and so I said this prayer, and people have heard this before. It's like I said, God, whoever you are, whatever you are, I don't want to be a burden on anyone. If you give me my life back, I will do whatever your will is, but you got to be very clear about what I should do. And I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
It's kind of bossy.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, man, I got backup.
I will only help if you, really, I need it notarized.
We had a relationship. It's true. I always, I had this open heart. So, yeah, absolutely. And so...
Could you open the door and put the little baggie? Keep it open.
So the next morning, the doctor comes back in. He says, I'm going to check your legs. Different doctor. Looks at my leg. It's like, oh my God, we can take the stitches out right now. Overnight. Can you imagine the impact it had on me as a kid? You have a prayer, and the next morning. Not a week later, not whatever. The next morning. So imagine what impact it had on me as a kid. And if you don't have belief in your heart, give it a chance. Give it a chance. Give it a chance. Sometimes people are their own worst enemy.
So when you say belief, I sort of hear an openness.
Yeah, absolutely. That the possibility goes beyond your conceptualization, which could be pretty crummy. And if you look at the political view of the world, you get a pretty good idea that some of the conceptualization out there is a little crummy. Okay? Not trying to give anybody a hard time. I'm just saying.
Not in the positive croissant kind of crummy.
Yeah.
This is like
absolutely.
You wish it wasn't crummy like a brick.
It's true. And you want to go low carb because otherwise you're hypoglycemic, and there are other problems that come up from that. So I just don't go there, man.
Let's control insulin.
And look, there are people I truly love who love donuts, and I love watching them eat donuts. I just don't want to partake as such. Vicariously, I can accept it. It's fine.
Are you saying donut do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay.
See, this is why we get along.
Okay. So you mentioned Prem.
Prem Rawat.
Prem Rawat, Maharaji.
So, yeah, so I get out of the hospital, and I go teach. There's an advanced yoga class at School of Yoga, Billy Boyd Galnick, my yoga mom. And so I'm teaching at her school. And she said, look, you teach the advanced classes, I'm going to teach the beginners, because it's harder to teach beginners. So I was good with that, so I could do all kinds of stuff anyhow. So I did that stuff. And I got finished with my class, and I tried to meditate, and I couldn't get to the place I wanted to get to. And I was like literally in tears at that particular point. And I walked downstairs, and there was one lady who just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And she was very outgoing and very aggressive in the way she did things and so forth and so on. I come down after teaching my advanced class, and she looks at me. She said, you know, there's this Mahatma, as she put it. There's this Indian guy at Rice that's lecturing on meditation. And if you go right now, you'll probably be able to see him. And it was this old Indian yogi. And you could barely understand the guy. And I sat there for, how long? Gosh, long time. I sat there until 5 the next morning with him. Not at Rice, we went to another house. It was a very weird scene. So you have all these people poured in. He had some guy with 2 jugs of water. And this Mahatma, this Indian guy is going around talking to all these people. I was like, are you very sincere? And he gets to this one guy. He's like, are you very sincere? And the guy goes, yes, I'm very sincere. He says, I don't know about you. And he looks at him very carefully. He had a really intense gaze. And the guy goes, well, the truth is, I put LSD in this water, and I thought I'd give everybody an experience. Should I leave? And the old Indian guy just shakes his head. And the guy gets up and leaves. Well, by 5 in the morning, there's not too many people left. And they start going around and giving meditation. And so as they're going around giving meditation, you have this huge energy coming up your spine. It's Kundalini. There's no question about it. I had experienced Kundalini before. But it was very, very strong. And, you know, so there's all this light, and there's Kundalini and so on. It's like, you know, go practice. So it was just, that was my outset. And so I've been going along that path, and life kind of carries you away, and I'm spending a lot of time with Himalayan monks. And the intention is to have the keepers of knowledge. There's 5 monks. Don't worry, I'm not trying to proselytize here. But they have this beautiful knowledge. I said, would you like to, Pam Johnson is the one who introduced me to it. And I went in to teach my advanced class one Thursday night, and I had a lot of people there. And I saw this picture of this Himalayan monk. And so I went to my strongest student at the time, which was Sam Evers. And I told Sam, you're teaching tonight. He said, what are you doing? You know, all these people are here for you. It's like, I'm going to see this guy. I said, well, who is this guy? I said, I don't know. It's like, but I'm going.
So, I mean, how long have you been staying with the Himalayan guys?
Oh, gosh, what, like 2011?
Okay. I want you to just get this. When you, hey, brother, come in.
Nice tie. Wow. And the guy in the suit is somebody I really care about a lot, too. So it's good to see him.
Anywhere. And we got blocks for your butt. Yeah. Butt blocks. Anybody looking for answers? You're not looking for any answers? No, answers. Answers.
Always looking for answers.
How are your kids going to turn out? Are you curious? Not at all? Yeah. In general, I find most people are answer hoarders. They're like, have you seen a hoarder's house? Hoarder? Not the other word. A hoarder? Yeah. And so you just like collect rightness. And then when somebody asks you a question, you go like, I know that, but. It's really unpleasant to be around most people because we're just super excited about being right. And how it's super hard to continually grow. And so there's two questions that I find that help stimulate growth. I'm always looking to try to blow things up so that I can grow. If you have too much on your plate, you know what you do, right? Break the plate. It's too small. You need a bigger plate. The pot's too small, what do? You get a bigger pot. So there's two questions. One is, what do you want? It's a fantastic question. What are you excited about? What are you interested in? There's lots of ways you can think about it. But the other one is, what is missing? What's missing? And I think that's actually a really great stimulator because it makes you think about the positive, not what's wrong, but which is like, ugh, I don't like that. If my boss was better, then I'd be happy. No, it's like, what's missing? Communication, love, trust, connection, happiness, growth, community, adoration, respect. That'd be cool if I had that with my boss. You start saying it in the positive. So you see a picture of a monk. Is there something missing or is there something you're wanting?
No, there's a choice he made. His choice was to renounce everything. I'm not there yet. But why did he renounce everything? Because when you clear everything out of the way and you see something that needs to be done, you will get whatever you need doing whatever it is you do.
No noise.
No noise. You don't have to ask any questions. All you do is you show up in a given situation. And that's what happens. The quieter I get, let's put this in perspective because there needs to be a little perspective here. If you start clearing out all the junk you've collected, I'm not talking about in your apartment or your house or whatever, inside of you, all the things you carry from your history, everything, and you just get rid of it. So you're pure like newborn baby. Maybe newborn baby even isn't that pure yet. They carry things in. Why? You wanted a body, so now you get the genetics of your parents too. So already you're biased. Now what does it mean? Let's say we clear everything out and you find some baseline above which, let's say below which nothing exists. So what is pralaya? Pralaya is total unmanifested energy, raw energy, unmanifested, not even consciousness.
Personifested.
So you have absolutely a baseline above which you can measure everything. So what's the first thing that happens if you have that? You say you have that possibility. Now what? Now the possibility is, well, I would like to exist. I don't want to be raw unmanifested energy. I would like to exist. So what's the whole idea with pralaya or better yoga or anything else? You have to have some baseline above which to measure whatever it is that you did, so you have an idea of how what you did affected you in the next moment. So you do a given pose a given way, and then you notice how you feel. And when you notice how you feel, you don't come to any conclusions right away, because if you come to conclusions, that's just your mind trying to organize reality to make yourself right, to give yourself the right answers. You know,
Another answer.
the sea of all answers is right there on top of your head. Meditation isn't taking repose in your head. Meditation is taking repose in your heart. As soon as your heart completely opens up. Why not take your love away from anybody? Because as soon as you do that, you just close the little port in your heart. Now, do you really want to do that? You have so much love that you can afford to shut it down? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so what happens when you begin to when you begin to take repose in your heart? Himalayan monk, what do they tell you? You go into samadhi. What happens in samadhi? At a certain point, heart stops. Probably a lot of people already experience breathing stopping. So in meditation, breathing stops. Or it slows down tremendously, and you have all this energy running so on. Quiet the heart is, mind gets quiet. People say, you control your breathing, it stops the mind. No, it doesn't. When heart gets quiet, mind stops. Thoughts arise from the perturbations in the heart. Mind has already got all this noise going on. So at a certain point, you have to become quiet inside your heart. How are you going to become quiet inside your heart if you don't just say, okay, I can't even suffer if I didn't have a life. So at that point, you're grateful that you have a life. That you have a life so you can even suffer. Because you can't even suffer otherwise.
Anybody's butt suffering right now?
Yeah, we can get up and move around.
Well, what I was going to suggest is that we take a deep inhale. Ontology is the study of being. It's trying to put words to what it is to be a human being, and English really fails at that. We're trying to, I'm a big fan of language. We are students of language, and I love language because I can have an experience and I can go in your head, now you have that experience. And if I write a book and die and in 600 years you read it, great life, you're doing good, 600 years old. You can actually hear my thoughts in your head. And if anything that we're talking about when we start talking about being doesn't make sense, you're almost certainly holding your breath. Absolutely. For sure. It's what you do. You start holding your breath when you stare at your phone. So the second you start actually, would you say isn't it annoying to try to describe it? It's fun. It's a fun game. But I like the way Eckhart Tolle talks about it. It's trying to talk about meditation trying to talk about presence is like the chief of police trying to find an arsonist when the arsonist is the chief of police. Right, we're trying to think our way into not thinking. All right, so everybody make sure you're inhaling, and some breeze just came in. I'm curious about you as a thinker too, because there's a lot of things we take for granted in this conversation that none of us would be having certain kinds of conversation if it wasn't for Robert. So, there's how each of your teachers has sort of influenced you, and I sort of think of our lives. Everybody remember Plinko from Price is Right? Plinko? You stand at the top of a board with little pegs in it, somebody drops a thing, and you those are all your teachers. You're just sort of bouncing. And you only had access to the teachers the previous bounce bounced you into. It's all sort of random. Don't take credit for it. I totally don't take credit for this guy. But thinking about, I love looking at my practice and say, okay, something like, why do we care about shoulder function, scapular function? That's not a normal conversation. When you listen to most teachers of any discipline, physical therapists, you know that you're in for a real treat when they start talking about the human body, because nothing they say makes any sense. It's actually a real problem. And so part of the gift of this conversation is that there is a kind of rigor in the conversation around the human body, the measurables. So
if you can create uniform pressure over your joints in a given pose. So I'm in, it's kind of my habitual siddhasana. This is different. So if I continue to sit in a given way, it will create minor deformations in my spine. And then the energy can't run as well. So when I can get to a place where I'm completely comfortable, then I completely let go, and I let go of just literally everything. And I go to this proper place. it begins to, if you've done your work, you've done your postures to clear out the debris from your history, the etchings from the experiences in your life, and you become pretty clean and pretty quiet, then what happens is you're sitting is the energy just comes to you. You get into this very silent, still, spacious place. So when I started looking at poses, I thought I was just solving joint problems. So I solved these joint problems. Okay, if you rotate your shoulder in too much, it's going to hurt on the inside because I'm compressing too much here. And if I get too strong in the muscles in the front of my chest, then I'm going to overstretch the back of my shoulder and I'll get a rotator cuff tear. So you have two flavors of problems, compression and overstretch, if you will. There's more to it than that. That's the superficial version. And so what happens if I create uniform pressure over my joint? The noise gets quiet in my body. Then you start finding, interestingly, that all these energies start waking up in your body.
So okay, but you had the language to describe the movements.
Yeah.
So, but it also sounds like you're doing it by feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like by taste.
Absolutely by feel. It was a kinesthetic sensation. I was visual until I got into Rice, and I was, like I said, I was in a bad neighborhood, and then I had some experiences with some literal spirits that were floating around in the sky. You can think I'm nuts because I'm nuts. And yeah, they were floating around in the sky. I sat on. I wasn't into do a lotus and meditate and so on. I was looking at self-realization fellowship and the work of Yogananda and so on. So I would sit in a chair for meditation. And I could sit on the floor, but I didn't. I sat in a chair because not getting an ego, make sure that I want perfect alignment so I can meditate deeply. And I opened my eyes and I saw this human being floating over my head, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll increase it. Because I was living on rice. Literally rice, nothing else. That's what I could afford. So I was literally living on rice, and said, well, I'll just up the rice I have, and that'll kind of kill my visual acuity, and I'll just stay in, because, I can't afford these distractions and get through rice at the same time. So that's what happened. I don't know where the hell this is going, but let's go, man.
So some of you, okay, raise your hand if you have doubt. Okay, so let's say he said something that you want, right? If you're drawn to certain styles, to certain aesthetics, and Robert says something, it's like, oh, I want that. Does anyone have the voice that immediately says, oh, but I can't, because if you can't hear it, you have it. If you really think you can't have it, that's sort of like saying you can't determine how salty your soup should be. How do you know when your soup has enough salt? Do you measure the salt out grain by grain? What do? You taste it. That sounds like such a dumb question, right? So why aren't you paying attention to the sensations of your body? Like right now. Some of you are trying not to feel your butt. Make the butt go. Just feel it. And so what I keep hearing you say is that, okay, there's all the noise of the conversation that is the baggage of our inheritance. And then there's signal.
Right.
And the power is, where do you put your attention? And you said something really that was super helpful for me a long time ago. You can either make choices out of fear or out of love. And so that's a way to language what to put your attention on, right? I can't dissect you and show you love. How much love do you have in your arteries? But you can experience love, can't you? So you can taste it. So you can actually, and once you have except for some of you, I'm so sorry to bring this up. I know it's hard, the loveless life you live. And just don't take that personally, Brittany. You're looking at me, that's not me. I'm full of love. But that's a shorthand, right? We're trying to find language to sort of describe this experience.
Right.
So I think so let's talk about lineage just a tiny little bit, and then I want to have time for you guys to ask questions.
I want to say one other thing, though. And this is something that's important because it'll give you something you can apply immediately. When you have a question, You don't go to your head. And I learned this intuitively when I was young. People would ask me a question. Okay, so I'm a well-educated guy. I can come up with answers. But it's not for me to come up with answers from my brain. So I would do something different. I'd become very quiet inside. I'd stop thinking. And I'd create space. And I'd create this space. And I'd want the answer to come into that space. And I'm no time pressure. So people would ask me a question. And I'd sit. And I wouldn't be moving. My eyes wouldn't be moving. I'd be just very quiet. And they say, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? I'm not thinking about anything. What are you doing? I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the answer. Now, how long are you going to wait for the answer? How long are you going to wait? If you start doubting inside of yourself, you already closed the hole.
Yeah, you're confident.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can hear the confidence?
Yeah.
There's not like, I hope the answer comes. I mean, I don't know why they're asking me, but I'll do my best. Here's a space. I hope the universe provides.
You are more powerful than you can possibly imagine, so quit minimizing yourself. It does not help the world to do that.
What does that look like? Stop minimizing yourself. What does that look like?
It makes it hard for everyone else.
That's the result. What does it look like for them to stop minimizing themselves?
I'm seeing it right now. Can you feel it? I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Okay? Go inside of yourself and find the most beautiful love that you have inside of you, because it's inside of you. It's not outside. It is not outside. It is not outside. It's in you. And feel it inside of you, because it's in you. You're not looking outside. Don't look outside. It's not outside.
And some of you right now are thinking, I can't. Stop that too.
Just try to feel the hearts of lots of people here. Go to that beautiful space. The most beautiful heart that you can find inside of anyone. It's your heart too. It's not different. What do they say in Advaita Vedanta? Not two. Not two. You understand? Not two. We're not separate. You bleed the same way as I do. You have similar needs. It's not different. You're just as valuable. I may talk a lot, but you'll have a gift that maybe you haven't even recognized yet. You're just as valuable. We need absolutely every human being in the world to change the world. Everyone. Everyone. Do not remove yourself. Because to do whatever we do, we need you. I mean this sincerely. It breaks my heart to see how cruel people are to themselves. I have a gift. I can pull grief out of people. Large numbers, easy. So if you won't cry your tears, I will do it. But why don't you learn to do it so that you can help me and help some of the other people? Quit the arrogance of being strong. Bullshit, man. You're just stuffing things. Don't stuff it. Don't stuff it so that you can look good. Be vulnerable. Be willing to be vulnerable. Quit the game of being better than or strong or powerful. Bullshit, man. It is. It's nonsense. So people say little bitty tiny lies because they're afraid of what someone else is saying. I've done that stuff. And what ends up happening, a lot of people get hurt as a result. That's what happens. How do you think in totalitarian states they end up the way they do? People saying little tiny lies, and over a period of time, it's like you can't back away from it, and it gets to be a bigger and a bigger thing, and next thing you know, you're doing things that you don't really want to do. Don't get sucked in by that stuff. This is a real thing. This is a real thing. You want to save the world? Start with you. One person down, one person to go. And you're the first person. You're the first person. Am I adamant about this? You bet I'm adamant about it. Because I see how many kids suffer because of that. And I don't care how old you are, you're a kid. People act like they're sophisticated, they're adults and so forth and so on. Bullshit. You're a kid. Quit being hard. Drop all this stuff, because it takes time to do it. So you're not suffering the last years of your life. So when people come around you, people complain to me all the time. It's like, oh, I've got so-and-so who won't do yoga, and, you know, they're in my family and so forth. And you know what I tell them? I said, okay, good. You practice yoga. You practice more yoga. You get around them. You pick up all the stuff they're carrying, and you shed it for them. And when they get clear enough and they realize how much better they feel because you're around, they'll want to do it too. And then maybe if we all do it, then we can save our whole world from all the atrocities that go on. That's not for somebody else to do it. It's certainly not for the governments to figure out. One person down, one person to go. Okay, I'll calm down a little bit now. But I'm adamant about this stuff. This is important.
So I'm in the world of doing. I hear there's really kind of, it's not fearless, but it really is a kind of unembarrassability of self-expression. Like being willing to risk standing for another human being.
Absolutely.
Because that doesn't always look good. And to actually say what's true over playing it safe.
Yeah, if you're having a communication with another person, that's one of the problems I've had in my life, just through the life. Yeah, imagine that. It's like, what happens? If you're going to say what's true, then you're going to risk offending someone else for saying what you think is true. That doesn't mean that what you're saying is true, but if you don't broach the subject and the other person doesn't just listen to you and take it in and try and understand what your perspective is and doesn't give some kind of feedback about their point of view, it's communication. What do you think community is? Communication. You have to communicate. What's communication? Reduction of uncertainty. So when I say something, get over if it's right or wrong. Just take it in and see, is there something there I can learn? And is there something I can add that maybe you missed? So it becomes a cooperative venture. Now we have community. That's when that happens.
Anybody scared of that? A little bit? So for those of you that are scared, some of you are pretending that you're not scared. Do you want a seat? No. You're good? You're good. Evelyn will be happy to get up. So for those of you that are scared, maybe there's...
Can you remind me what it is we're scared of? What you're asking we're scared of?
Saying what's true.
Saying what's true.
Are you ever scared of that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so again, Robert's saying it's not the truth, it's what's true for you. And so this is one of the things I absolutely got from you, that the only thing people ever want from you is you. That's it. And so when we're talking about bold action, what we're really asking is, what does it look like for you to be you writ large? Right? You remember the John Mulaney show? He starts a show on NBC and it has his name, and it failed after one season. That's hard to take. Like, no, they didn't like me. It was me. It's like Seinfeld, if it failed, yes, Seinfeld, you suck. Yeah, well, but he's on the court, living his life, like living the dream that he has. If only your butts could feel this breeze. Okay, so I think just one last little question.
Okay.
And then I want you guys to create space for the questions you have. It's like right here, over there.
And the way you create space is you go into your heart and you take away all that is not you fully. Whatever you love the most, whatever is the most human you've ever felt, most vulnerable you've ever been. Open that up so you feel that. Don't push any of it away. Just let it open up and feel it. Because underneath the clouds of all of that is the most beautiful experience you'll ever find.
Do you think people are limited by trying to look good?
Absolutely.
I mean, you guys look good,
Yeah,
but trying to look good is a concern. Okay, so there's questions out there, and I want you to have those questions. So let's do the lineage game.
Okay.
I wanted to see if you can find the sort. Okay, so I remember, basically, if I look hard enough, I can trace every thought I have, every invention, every solution, every preference to a conversation somebody had with me. Somebody was generous enough to do that sharing he's talking about. To just like, well, what if this? And I was never the same. When they said that thing, whatever the thing was, I actually felt my world get bigger, and it doesn't go back. And so consider that what I personally take on as a teacher is to do that for people. Is to, before I die, I'm gonna blow your world up just a little bit, and then you can't go back. Ha-ha! You're ruined. You can never look at Seinfeld the same way. So, and we're gonna play the lineage game, and see if you can. So, and I can always trace it back, and I have a knack for remembering. I remember every class he's ever taught that I was in. The ones I wasn't there for, I'm not that good. And I remember turns of phrases. I remember clarity, not clarity. I remember seeing your evolution, because when you're with Robert, it's really clear what he cares about. First of all, he loves you. I don't know if you're present to that. Like when you're in a room with Robert, you're in a room with somebody who loves you, like to death.
Well, maybe not that far, but
No, he'll die for his love for you, for sure.
to life, anyhow.
Yeah, to more life.
Yeah.
But you're also sort of in Robert's playground. Like, this is what I care about right now. It's very much authored for you, but it's still like, this is, if he's in a haiku phase, there's going to be some haikus. So, okay, so I love remembering that myself, and so just to see if we can get there, no traditional teacher does the practice with their class. Where does that come from?
Who knows? I don't know.
Why do you do it?
Why do I do it?
It's the norm now, but we really take that for granted. That's not how you were taught.
If I'm in a room and I'm doing my own practice, this is the answer. If I'm in a room and I'm doing my own practice, then I only feel me. So I get up early in the morning when the energy is really quiet and I do my practice then. And now it's just meditation and pranayama. The last few years I stopped doing any physical practice because I just wanted to see what would happen. And I'm getting ready to go back into it now. But I would just do my own practice, so I could only feel me. And then I noticed when I got into the class, I could feel everyone. Now, what am I going to do? Am I going to go in and get a personal history, including a medical history of every person in that class and decide what to do in every pose? No possible way. So how am I going to do that? I know what I feel like, and I know when it's wrong, and I know what to do if I'm by myself. So if I get into the classroom, what do I feel? I feel everybody. And so I take the average of whatever's going on in there that I'm feeling you right now. So I feel you. And then I use my experience to decide what I'm going to do. So I don't have to look at you. I mean, sometimes it's good not to look at the student because they think like, oh, he's noticing me. So then they get nervous. So if I don't notice him, then they feel, oh, he's not watching me, so it's safe. It's like, somebody told me about a little cat. If you have a little kitten that goes into a room, they walk around the edges to make sure that it's safe. I do the same thing with my yoga students. Oh, they're just playing. I don't need to correct everything that's going on with them because right now, they're just skittish about being in the room.
So there's a moment, so you're teaching classes, and there's like it's your practice informing how, so you would just do the practice.
You feel the class. I never know what I'm going to do until people show up, and so what do I do first? It's like, who has aches and pains? You get some idea of what's generally going on, and you make a choice about the rest of it. The rest you feel. But at least to have a connection with people.
So it's like a cook without a recipe.
Right. It's your class.
Yeah.
It's your class because you're there. And my job is to feel you and then determine, based on my experience, what to do. That's what he does.
I just torture people. That's all I do.
But effectively.
I feel your weakness, and I target it.
I'm actually going into some of that phase myself.
Yeah. Some people think I'm a sadist. I'm a masochist, but I follow the golden rule. Okay, so just you hear, like, there are a lot of things that are common in what we think of as a yoga practice today that weren't common, and I promise you, ideas propagate very quickly. And so many of the things we think are normal, like doing the practice with our students, that wasn't from some famous Boston yoga teacher. That's from this city. Okay, so you're also extremely conversant in anatomy. Was that a means to an end?
Yeah, I started seeing that as people got older, their joints failed in very specific ways. So only a small number of ways each joint would fail. So I figured, okay, so if they're going to fail a given way, you get compression on one side of a joint, overstretch on another side of the joint. Then if I strengthen the right muscles in the right position, then it will resolve the problem. And so I started resolving problems just thinking, well, I'll correct just the joint problems that are going on. And that turned into a system, and then I realized that, it had a magnificent effect on the energetic flows inside of a body, and all kinds of other things, including all kinds of emotions started coming. A lot of things started changing as a result. But it started off just being joints.
Right, but you remembered yoga, but you had to study anatomy.
Yeah,
I'm asking when you...
Yeah, because it wasn't done the same way.
Right.
And language was a real problem.
Right.
That was a real problem.
If you read Shivananda's guide on yoga, that's not going to help you. And it is super clear, Iyengar had zero clue what any muscle in the body did. He couldn't tell you what biceps did, couldn't tell you what functions iliopsoas does, or how to isolate iliacus.
He would talk about skin. He would talk about you have to stretch the skin on this part and whatever.
But that was only by feel. Like, extraordinarily knowledgeable guy, but it's sort of like doing your taxes and never studying math. Like, there's a language to the body that you had to study. What was the trigger for that? Did you start solving problems first and then...
I started solving problems first.
Right.
And what would happen is it was very interesting because every week certain people would come with certain problems. But it was all the same problem every week. And so after a couple of years or 3 years of this occurring, I'd come to the beginning of the week and it's like, I wonder what they're going to teach me this week. And then you start getting variations on the themes, and that's how I learned. It was sort of like the universe gave me exactly what I needed to learn, and I was just being a good student.
Yeah. So on the court, so one of the things I'm super grateful about my students, right? I learn from my students because I have a lot of super smart surgeons and doctors that come to my class, and they'll correct me if I say anything wrong. It's fantastic. Was it kind of like that?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
People are like, I have this very particular issue, and then that gave you the language, and then it's like, okay, now you have the word. But at some point, you're staring at anatomy books.
Yeah, at some point. But I mean, I was a physicist, already kind of knew how everything. Well, I mean, when I first started practicing yoga, it was really crude. So I was doing all this yoga, and I was sore in every muscle of my body all the time. I would move, and I could feel every muscle in my body. And then after a year and a half of that, I decided I should maybe become a little more subtle about the way I was doing things. But at first, it was just go for it. Okay, let's see. Will the leg come off if you do this? Right. Okay. And I did crazy stuff, man. I did really crazy stuff.
Every pose in the book. That's right.
Yeah, every pose every day.
It's an encyclopedia, not a practice.
Right.
Yeah. You're not supposed to do it all, man.
Right. So at one point I was doing like Ashtanga yoga and Iyengar yoga and Shivananda yoga and. So, I don't know, my practice was like insane.
Right. Well, so the thing I love about, one of the reasons we're having this kind of conversation is what I notice is the podcasts that I'm attracted to are unscripted conversations between two people that have mutual interests or at least independently interesting. And why do you like that? It's like being at a great dinner party. It's better, lectures just put you to sleep, right? Because it's one way. But you get to bear witness to somebody being really excited about the thing they're excited about. And so what I feel like the space you've always created is a space where it's okay to be excited about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To have a preference.
Hey, you're still alive, right? So what possibilities do you have? Why not look for them? You know, as you open up and you clear up the remnants of previous experiences, you find they're not etched into your flesh. You find that you're holding the toxins inside of you. And when you start washing that away, suddenly you start feeling, people are not different. They're the same. You go into this quiet space. So I can sit in a room with you. You know, some people are afraid to get around someone that has problems. Well, that's becoming less and less so. Why? Because I'm not afraid of whatever you're carrying. Because if I clear myself out, it can't stick. So I can feel what you're feeling. It doesn't mean I can't feel. I can feel your pain. I can feel it. But I'm not afraid of it. Because it can't stick to me. Why won't it stick to me? Because I'm feeling the source. And I do. Not all the time, but I do. I'm better.
Is any part of that like, it doesn't stick to you because you say so?
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. But there's some mechanical, chemical, whatever the heck. There's some other stuff. If you stay in a non-judgmental state for a long enough period of time where you're not judging yourself for whatever it is that you're holding inside or whatever you're judging inside here, because a lot of judgment starts inside of you. It doesn't have anything to do with you. You may project on this person, that, but it starts in you. If you're clean, nothing can stick to you. And then what do? How do you think Mother Teresa could sit there and kiss the wounds of a leper and not get leprosy? Why? Pure love. What is going to overcome that? You want a shield? What the hell are you doing a shield for? That shows you're afraid right away. I don't teach people to do shields. Don't do a shield. Stay in love. That's it. What's going to go through that? What is ever going to go through that? If you're going to support your fear by putting shields up, well, then you deserve to have your shield, your fear inside your shield. You're steeping in your own fear. Why? Quit it. Can you stop today? Well, maybe not today, but you start going in the right direction. That's all. You start going in the right direction. It's not an instant thing. It's like, Grand Canyon. Took a while. Right? But if you don't start, say, well, maybe next lifetime, it's never going to happen. You have to start. And what do you start with? Okay, 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. So what do you do? And I'm going to take 2 minutes. If you take 2 fingers, put them between your eyebrows, rub the curve of the eyebrow until you find where the curve of the eyebrow meets in the center. It's not the forehead, it's between the eyebrows. And then you pull your hand away. And then you focus where you touched. And as you exhale, you totally focus there. And you pause. And you open yourself up like you're pouring out all the stuff you no longer want to carry. And as you inhale, you feel the back of the skull, as if a hand was touching the back of your skull. Still focus on midpoint between eyebrows, but feel the back of the skull. And you let the brain charge from the energy you're drawing in from the source, because you're drawing energy in from the source. And you pause. So you exhale and merge into that space, midpoint between eyebrows, and then inhale and feel the energy dancing on the back of your brain, occipital region. Exhale, pause. And inhale and pause. And that's the right direction. See how easy it is? 2 minutes every day. 2 minutes when you've lost control of your life, or you think you've lost control of your life, because the truth is you don't have control of it. You don't have control of it because you're trying to control it. Cut it out.
Right. One of the things I heard, so it's another way to say that, you've heard the pithy saying, the common denominator between in all of your crappy relationships is you. The only one who was there for all of them was you. And so when you start blaming other people, be skeptical of that. Like, that's the time to sit. Like, the second you feel disempowered about anything and you know for sure it's their fault, for 100% of the time, for sure, that's you.
And you have to take time to be alone. You have to stop long enough to realize it's not outside, it's in you. Right. And clear that out. And that's not always fun.
I'll say one thing for the leaders in the room, which is everybody in this room. Your students will put you on a pedestal and then they knock you down, for sure. That is the nature of this game. You will have that happen to you. When the next time somebody is upset with you, you can't tell them, oh, it's not me, it's you. But you also have to know that it's true. They're not upset about you. They're not upset about you. They're doing the thing that you do to everybody else. And so what if you could love them? That's the practice. So we have about 20 minutes. Did anybody come up with a good question? It has to be good. Hi, nice to see you. I know you. It's been a little bit. Your thumbs up? Is your arm ruined from?
It's ruined.
Yeah, but there's no sound to the live stream. We will put sound to the video and have it up later, so that we're recording the sound successfully. The video and sound will be linked later if you want to see this later. You had a question?
So you shared on your Facebook about kind of the astronomical number of people that have said that Robert has either saved their life or touched their life. Can you talk about that and also your experience with?
My experience is super interesting, and I'm not going to talk about it. And I will say, okay, so you're super generous. Like, it's a real problem. And there is a very simple reason that this is not a rich man sitting next to me. A very simple reason he does not have a yoga empire and a horde of yoga disciples all clamoring with their Pralaya pens and special handshakes and special tongue thing they do inside their head. Because to a fault, he actually lives for you. So I have a super interesting story about how you saved my life, and I mean it. Like, I'm reasonably confident I wouldn't be alive. Raise your hand if that's true for you. Not about me, about him. Raise your hand. All right, Robert, close your eyes for a second. Everybody raise your raise your Pat, you raise your arm, Pat. Come on, get up there. All right, now you can open your eyes. And you can see. And I hope you can see these people loving you. I know you're always present to it, you feel it, except I think this particular profession attracts a certain kind of people who have a special skill at being very bad at being friends. Like, we're kind of bad at being friends. Because we're just always doing stuff, and like, you never call or text. It's like kind of crappy. And so you're sort of alone. And I felt this really acutely for the first time when we were having my first baby, and I realized for the first time I am literally the bottom of the food chain. I support my family, I support my wife, I work and I pay for all the bills, and unless I take care of me, I'm going to die. Like, no one's going to rub my feet because I'm the official foot massager for everyone in the family. And so just know that, you know, I'm always curious, what's going to be my last thought when I die? I love thinking about that. And I have some goals. And one of them, the one thing that I refuse to have in my head when I die is, but wait! Mostly because I'd be super embarrassed to die like that. How ungrateful. And I hope you know how much we love you and the crazy impact you've had, and that your karmic debt was paid a long time ago. It's all icing now, brother. You make a big difference. And then he has nothing to say about that. You have another question? I hope you're present to that. Yes?
I just want to say thank you for you being sharing today. I'm being in a situation of trying to know how to get rid of things that I don't want. And this exercise of breathing is going to be very helpful. So thank you.
Robert, what observations or conclusions did you come to trailing off your physical practice? I think you mentioned.
Let me repeat that just so we can have it on audio. What observations, catharsis, realizations have you had that led you to stop practicing physically, and then now that you've discovered? Is that a good précis?
Sure.
And then what you've discovered since you stopped physical practice?
I don't need the physical practice if I go to the pure place in my heart. To the extent that you hold on to things, you definitely need a physical practice. Can fascia get tight? Yeah, but you know, I teach yoga classes a few times a week, and that's enough to keep things open.
How many classes?
No, I don't know, somewhere between 7 and 15. So,
Yeah.
but you know, and it's becoming more physical because it's just damn boring, you know, not to do something with your body. So yeah, and it's fun. I mean, you know, I don't rock climb these days, and I got to start that again. It's like, you know, you do experiments, you know. So I mean, you know,
How long did you go without a back bend?
without a back bend? It's been 20 years now.
It's just an experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, there's no way to tell what'll happen if you don't do it. And who the hell else am I going to ask? I'm going to ask anybody? No, I'm number one guinea pig. And then I know for sure. So when I tell you something about a given pose, it's because I went through it. It's not conjecture. I don't make conjectures. I mean, you can, but, you know.
Do you recommend that kind of experimentation?
Only if you're totally honest with yourself. That's the only reason. Now, you're relentless. You can do it. But there are not too many people that'll do that kind of stuff. You'll do it because you'll go all in. If you're not willing to go all in, don't try it. Don't try it. If you do it from your head, don't do it. Because you just kill yourself. That won't do any good. If you do it because sincerely in your heart you want to understand, and you're not trying to prove anything to anybody, do it. Otherwise, don't do it. Seriously.
Maybe said another way, like, I find that when you, it actually takes time to figure out what you really want. Like, you have to get quiet to hear the thing that you really care about. Because mostly almost certainly, some of that stuff is in your life, but you've made choices that are absolutely rational choices, but they're not based on what you actually care about. And so, if you care about insanity and seeing if this handstand will murder you, like that's, yeah. Like a flavor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what happens? The student shows up with a flavor of some atrocity you just committed on yourself in some practice, and you immediately know what to do. You know exactly. They walk in. They're walking in the door, and you know what the problem is. Yeah. You can feel it. And if you want to go through life not feeling what's going on around you because you're afraid of what you might feel out there, you're not going to learn much.
Anyone too old? No, I got no. Anybody too old? You're not too old? Are you sure? To get all this stuff? No? I can't start now. Good. Yeah, of course you can. You're the only one saying you can't. Okay, so you turn a higher number tomorrow.
Yeah, higher number. Right.
Higher number is tomorrow.
Yeah. Do we have the... Andre left. No, we don't. So, you're planning on hanging around for a while. That's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he's doing all the good work to hang around. So what's next?
I'm going to do more science because it's going the wrong direction. So I figured I'm going to get involved.
Like this, like
the experimental designs are crummy,
yeah, totally.
and they're missing things that, for whatever reasons, they're missing things. And so I'm going to get involved.
Yeah.
And I already have quite a few connections at this point, so it'll change. I will do that. It's already happening. Made great connections at Texas Yoga Conference, great connections in Southern Italy, great connections.
Can you give us an example of one of the design differences you would do?
Simple design difference is, well, I guess I have to tell the experiment.
What are we testing for?
What you're testing for is how do you reset a brain that's on alcohol. So the way you reset a brain that's on alcohol is, aside from all the dietary things and so forth and so on, there's a very specific thing that alcohol does. It interferes with the ability to learn at the level of a young child. And if you do proper meditation, you can get to the same place. You have that same learning ability. So what alcohol does is it interferes with very specific things. I won't get into the details of that.
It impacts your sleep as well, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
It gives a promise that it can't keep. And people kind of keep repeating the same thing, hoping they'll get a different result, and you can't get a different result. But what happens, at a certain point, if you can by meditation, by brainwave biofeedback, thermal biofeedback, you can shift a person, then suddenly they can drink socially. It's not really a problem. It's the excess that's the problem. And then what happens? All the things that, we're talking about alcoholics, okay? So I'm not talking about you. So you're talking about alcoholics. And what happens? They realize something is ruining their life and they can't stop. They realize it's creating problems in their life and they can't stop because there is a short circuit in the experiential process inside their brain. They can't emotionally internalize what's going on. And if you shift them, and you can do it with yoga, you can do it with shavasana. If you shift them the right way, it changes. And I've seen it happen more than once.
Are we just talking presence, or are you really just you have to go to meditation?
Specific, well, you need to go into body-based, and we've done it analytically. I mean, with psychologists and psychiatrists and EEGs and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's provable. This is not nonsense. This is real science. But you can do it if you put them in shavasana. And if you're here and you feel, just do that. Feel the index finger of your right hand, or your left hand if you want to do the left hand. But feel the index finger, and imagine the index finger is moving away from the center of your head, and you stay there. Now, feel the middle finger of your left hand, and imagine that middle finger of your left hand is moving away from the center of your head. So you've got the index finger of your right hand and the middle finger of your left hand, and feel that. And as you're doing that, imagine the shoulders are getting wider. And you start shifting. That is an altered state of consciousness. So if I can clear all the energetic pathways in your body, you start finding that people will detox. It does occur. That is not a definitive method for you to necessarily do it for yourself, but I can take you through it, and I've seen it happen in my class. So yeah, it's provable. If you read Arthur Avalon's Serpent Power talking about Kundalini, there's all this symbology and so forth and so on. That doesn't mean that stuff's not real. I can put modern language on that stuff and get something entirely different. Doesn't mean it's not real. It just means it's not the language that you used to. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything else. You put it in my modern scientific terms, but you got to know what you're looking for. So, good combination, mystic, scientist. You put those two together, you can do just about anything. But you got to have both. You can't do it just being intellectual. It's not going to work. You have to have an intuitive system. Yukawa discovered the meson that takes two positive charges, right? Two protons, and they stick together. Why do they stick together? Two positive charges. Why are they sticking together? Meson exchange. Where did he get it? Sitting in meditation. He got a sense of what was going on. There is no television series on earth as good as what happens inside of you. Nothing is captivating if you can just take the time to go in. It's worth it. It's a high subscription. It takes your commitment, but it's the best.
You have to pay for it.
You pay for everything. You're going to pay for everything one way or another. Even if you don't like it, you're going to pay for it. So just get something that comes highly recommended by some pretty advanced guys.
He's not saying don't watch Game of Thrones tonight. He's not saying that.
Go ahead. You'll learn something about relationships. I haven't seen it, but I figure that's why people watch stuff, right?
Any-
Robert, you mentioned to your yoga mom. Can you share with us more about what was your influence
Oh, Billy Golnick.
and
Billy Golnick.
the impact it had on his practice and how it informed your
Yeah, well, I mean, it was simple. I was sitting, I was solving problems. I would solve problems all day long. I'd solve problems until I had to turn a light on. at night, same place, sitting down. So everybody that passed by would see me solving problems while I was at Rise. And so one day, I get up, which is totally unlike me because it wasn't time for to turn the light on yet. And I went to the phone and I looked in the yellow pages. They had yellow pages in those days. And there was a school of yoga. That was the only school of yoga. And I called up and no one answered. So I went and sat down, continued solving my problems. And very shortly after I sat down, there's a knock on the door, and it's the milkman that lives next door. They actually delivered milk at that time. And he said, you look like a good kid. You know, your eye always, every time I pass by, I see you studying. So if you ever want to know where a place is, just ask me. I said, well, what about this place, Lovett Boulevard? There's a school of yoga on Lovett Boulevard. Oh, I was just there earlier this morning. He gave me landmarks. He told me everything. So I drive over there. No. They didn't answer, and I drove over there. And I'm telling myself in my head, okay, I understand, I have a head also, okay? And I'm telling myself, you're out of your mind, Boustany. What the hell are you doing driving over there? They didn't answer. So I drive up. This woman's walking out of the door. It's like, oh, that's my teacher. And it's like, crazy, crazy. Let her walk by, get out of the car, go to the door, ring the doorbell. Nobody answers. Guy's mowing the yard. It's like, oh, the directress of the school just walked out. She lives in one of the apartment houses, you know, down the street, down about a block. So I walk down there.
Not creepy?
Look at all the different doors, and I picked that one. I saw, oh, that's where she lives. And, of course, my head is telling me I'm completely out of my mind, which is probably true, but not for that reason. And sure enough, she walked out of the door, and she looked at me and said, she said, show me some yoga. So I showed her some yoga. She said, oh, you've done it for many lifetimes. And so she said, school opens in 6 weeks. I'll give you a call. So she called me up and told me the school was opening. And she said, I'm not going to charge you for classes. Why do I give things away to a lot of people? If I know they're sincere, I will give it away. I had one guy came. He said, I can't afford your class. I said, you stop smoking, I'll give you. 2 years later, he came back. And he said, I stopped smoking. So I gave him classes. Why do you do that? I was like, what do you think counters the suffering in your life? Is helping other people. That's what counters it. And the more you feel what other people feel, what do? How can I deplete myself of the love I feel in my heart? If I just keep pulling it out, then the heart just gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller. It's not going to get smaller. It's not going to happen. It's just like, what are you going to do? You know, you wake up in the morning, your eyes open, it's like, success. I made it through the night. I'm still alive for another day.
No dirt above me.
It's a good thing. So relax. There is no shortage of what you want. I've seen people, dock worker, banker, side by side, lying down in Shavasana. Neither one wanted to come out. Neither one judging the other one for whatever reason. They might, if they did. They may not. What does it mean? We all bleed the same way. We all need the same things. It's all the same. No better than, no less than. No better than, no less than. Okay, this can go on forever. Too much to say. Tomorrow's another day. If I make it through the night. And there's one last thing, and it's the last thing I always remind people. Look in the eyes of the people that you love. Because this may be the last time you ever see those eyes. Never take people for granted, ever. ever. Okay? This is my kindness to you because it's true. There will be a last time. So you be very grateful for every human being that you love around you all the time. Don't take your love away because it will hurt you. Maybe it'll hurt them too, but it will hurt you. What's my concern? You're my concern. This is sincere from my heart. I don't want anything from it. If I walked off into the side, there were many times I wanted to just walk down the road and never come back. Just keep going and see what happens. That may happen at some point, but not for a while yet.
It's a miracle the studio's still around.
Yeah.
So there are consequences when you save people's lives.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
There's like more love present and stuff. So, what's up, Joe? Oh, that's my wife. So this is all of my progeny, and that's for you. This is my gift for
Thank
you.
you so much, brother.
So you can look into the eyes of the people that love me and see what your love has done for my life.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we got to get some feedback.
You guys have feedback? We have feedback.
Positive feedback.
Thank you for your generous listening. Talking by yourself in a room is really boring. And it's actually a generous act to listen to someone. It's another thing I learned from you, to just sit when people are yapping away, and then they figure out all their own problems. I think we may have figured out some of our problems tonight.
Probably. I feel better.
So one way to language that is that you made tonight possible through the generosity of your listening, like listening as an act. So thank you for that. And you have a lighter? Okay, so let's all sing happy birthday. It's Easter, and if you're into Easter, we got a bunny cake. Me, 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 me.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Me, 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 me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Robert. Happy birthday to you.
Blow it out.
And now someone else is going to have to eat that.
That's right.
Thank you guys so much.